Culling game was an arc that introduced us to some of the best characters that we have ever seen in the entire series. In terms of design, writing, and even lore, all the characters that we get are just fantastic. And of course, this goes for both of the characters in today's video, as you can see by the title, Higuruma and Takaba, two of my favorite characters. But this matchup isn't actually as close as you might think, and it does favor one person more than the other. And actually, since they were both in Tokyo Colony 1, this fight is very possible, and it very likely could have happened. So I guess that's the scenario of when this fight is taking place. Let's say it's like a day or two before Megumi and Yuji had actually entered the colony, and let's just say Takaba had heard of Higuruma from other players, and he had actually decided to just seek him out, maybe just to beat him, or to add a new rule, or for whatever. It could have been for whatever reason, and Higuruma just decides maybe he's annoying, just as he did with Yuji, and Higuruma just decides to kill him. It's important to note this because remember, Takaba is someone who's not willing to kill his opponents but knock them out, which is still a win con for him. However, Higuruma is willing to kill his opponents once the fight has started, as he has killed at least 20 sorcerers. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. If you like JJK content just like this, be sure to subscribe because there is a ton on the channel and a ton more coming soon. And of course, thank you to all the special grade and honored one members of the channel, which is just that guy Trey. Thanks, man. Alright, now before I even actually talk about how this fight would go, first I should actually break down how strong each of these characters are. And actually, this is what inspired me to make this video, because I was actually going to make a video on how strong Takaba is and then a video on how strong Higuruma is. So let's start with Takaba. Takaba has a curse technique called the Comedian, which is absolutely broken in many ways. It is an ability that literally warps reality to the point that it can even oppose Gojo's Infinity and Limitless. Yes, that's right, this curse technique rivals even Gojo's and can oppose, because again, it can literally warp reality to the point that he can make scenarios that shouldn't even exist or be possible exist. So he can heal himself without reverse curse technique, he can possibly heal others without reverse curse technique, he can make himself far stronger and faster, he can create objects out of thin air, and he can also coat himself with objects out of nowhere, and he can also alter the properties of all these objects, such as making a paper fan which can blow away pretty much a bomb, or covering himself in food source but making it so slippery that even a powerful grade 1 plus level fighter like Iori Hazenoki can't even punch him because it's too slippery, even though it's just food source. So as you can see, again, warping reality, very powerful. But of course, this curse technique comes at a big cost. It's that you actually have to believe that your jokes are funny, and then these funny jokes come to reality. So imagine if someone like Yuta had copied this curse technique. You know, Yuta's a very nice guy, he's a very kind guy, but he's not exactly the funniest, and I also don't think he thinks he's funny, so he'd have to make jokes, and if he doesn't think it's funny, then it's not going to come into reality. So for someone like him, or a lot of the characters in JJK, let's be honest, it's not going to work, or it's not going to be effective. But for someone like Takaba, who has a few screw loose, it's perfect because he actually genuinely thinks everything he says is fun. So the big drawback for him isn't actually a drawback. And now this is why I always say Takaba is a character who is completely unscalable, and I actually think he is the only character who truly is unscalable, where it's just impossible to determine where he lands, and he's someone that is most likely just as strong as the author wants him to be. So if you want him taking on full powered Sukuna, hey, it could actually make sense of his curse technique. Or if you want him to somehow lose to a grade 1 sorcerer, I mean, I guess it's possible. It's just really hard to scale this guy. He's definitely not losing to any normal grade 1 sorcerer. Keyword normal. But yes, he's a very powerful man and some interesting character personalities that we should get into because it matters for this fight. He is someone who is pro-violence, but he doesn't want to kill people, as that's actually why he had 0 points. And another interesting point is that it is possible that he is the only character in the entire series who can actually change his output. Now again, it's possible that this is the case, but it's also possible that this isn't, since it's not 100% clear, since before he had actually attacked Hazenoki, he was implying that his cursed energy was building up tremendously, and then after attacking him, his output had skyrocketed. It is possible that it's just his normal output going to the max, but again, since he is someone who can change reality to his whim, if he wants his output to be high, he can change it to be high. It's genuinely a complete possibility and something that he very likely could do, even if it wasn't something he did before. But regardless, that is briefly breaking down the basics of Takaba. Now to get into Higuruma. Higuruma is a very powerful sorcerer, arguably a sorcerer with one of the highest potentials in the entire series, even more than Megumi. It's very insane how high it goes. He didn't even know what cursed energy was, what curse technique was, what curses are. He didn't know any of these things, and within 12 days by himself, so completely self-taught, he had become a grade 1 level sorcerer after getting his domain expansion and curse technique. I mean, just think about how crazy his potential is. His default is a domain expansion. That was actually what he unlocked when he first got cursed energy, and within 12 days reaching the level of a grade 1 sorcerer, that is higher potential than, again, Megumi and even Yuji, who I think have some of the highest potentials we have ever seen in the series, considering how quickly they had reached that grade 1 level, even though they are within their first years. It's really crazy, especially Yuji, considering he has only known cursed energy for a couple months. But I mean, think about it, Yuji needed all those months of training and then all these crazy special grade fights, you know, training with Gojo and Todo and then the Goodwill and Mahito just to finally reach that grade 1 level after Goodwill. Whereas Higuruma, you know, self-taught, doesn't need a teacher, and he did it all by pure instincts. It's truly just as the narration had said, so again, this is by GEGE's own words, his talent as a lawyer was amongst the very best out there. He was literally the #1 person and the top of his class in university. His skills and potential as a sorcerer actually outweigh that of his skills as a lawyer. Can you just believe how insane that is? So it is very understandable in how strong he is. Now let's actually break down his abilities, which would be very quick since there isn't too much to it. So obviously he has his curse technique, so presumably it's just the gravel, the hammer that he has, so he can throw it around, change its size and shape, and he can also make it disappear and appear at will. So if someone actually takes the weapon from him, he can actually just make it reappear in his hand. And then of course he has his Shikigami, the Judge Man, and his domain expansion, Deadly Sentencing, which is my favorite translation of what this domain expansion is called. This domain expansion is literally just a court trial, so once you enter the domain, it's a guaranteed hit on both the opponent and himself. So no one within this domain can actually use violence, well, excluding the act of violence with words, which is a whole different case. So pretty much Judge Man will bring up any sort of case or crime that the opponent has made. It can be anything from being as major as mass murder, or as something as small as, oh, you entered a gambling site when you were a minor. So it could be literally something as minor as you just littering to you actually killing people. Now, regardless of if it's minor or major, it determines on what sentencing you get if Higuruma beats you in a court case. And if Higuruma manages to beat you, there are 3 possibilities: guilty, confiscation, and death penalty. Guilty is obviously what you get if you lose, so no matter what it is, you just get guilty. If you have a minor crime, what you get is confiscation. So if you're someone with a curse technique, you basically lose your curse technique. Or if you're someone without a curse technique, you lose your cursed energy, like Yuji. However, it's interesting to note that if you lose your curse technique, by default, it actually messes with your ability to control cursed energy majorly. And this is a case even for veteran sorcerers, since it goes against long ingrained instincts. And if you actually get the guilty verdict for something like a major crime, then you get the death penalty, where Higuruma's gravel changes into the executioner sword. And this sword is incredibly powerful. If it just so happens to touch you, you instantly die. No ifs, no buts. And if you actually get the death penalty, it also comes with confiscation. So imagine fighting Higuruma with an ability that if it touches you, you're just instantly dead. As well as the fact that you no longer have your curse technique and you can barely even control your normal cursed energy. Needless to say, even though Higuruma himself is grade 1 level and very high grade 1 at that, he can actually beat characters who are a lot stronger than him because his domain expansion completely negates and nullifies his opponent's techniques. And now let's get into how this fight would actually go between the two and why I just don't think it's close. And if you've been enjoying the video so far, please do be sure to subscribe for more JJK content just like this on the channel. Now, I'm just gonna say it straight out, I think Higuruma wins this. Does that mean I think Higuruma is stronger than Takaba? No, I actually think Takaba is stronger than Higuruma, even though Takaba's unscalable. I think this is just a very bad matchup and a very unlucky one for Takaba. So let me actually explain how this would go. The thing is, domain guaranteed hits, they don't cancel out curse techniques, which is a big misconception that people have. I think this misconception comes from the fact that domain amplification was able to bypass Gojo's Limitless, and because of a certain bad translation, people just assume now you can't use your curse techniques in domain expansion. Again, this is just not the case. What's actually going on is that you can't use your curse technique to defend against the guaranteed hit. So usually this just applies with curse techniques that are very defensive. So let me explain. Let's say you're going up against someone like Gojo, Uro, who both of them manipulate space itself to guard themselves. A domain guaranteed hit would just ignore this technique, so it doesn't matter if it's making you stronger, faster, giving you immense defense, even manipulating things on an atomic level, or even manipulating reality as Gojo does with his Limitless. It will bypass that curse technique. So again, not turn it off, but the guaranteed hit would bypass it and would hit the opponent. So again, this is how Kenjaku's gravity technique was able to hit Yuki, where concept shouldn't actually affect her. However, Kenjaku's guaranteed hit would bypass her Bombay curse technique and then hit her directly. So this is why a lot of fans were actually insanely confused on why the gravity was affecting Yuki even though it shouldn't, which again only happened because the guaranteed hit itself hit her as if Bombay wasn't activated, or it nullified the defense even though the curse technique itself was not nullified. So I hope that makes sense. Now this goes into this domain expansion. So Higuruma's guaranteed hit pretty much makes it so no one in the domain can use any sort of violence, well, in terms of physical violence. And the thing is, this would apply to Takaba. It doesn't matter how strong Takaba's ability is to warp reality, as we saw with Gojo as well, who can also manipulate reality, the guaranteed hit will hit Takaba. Now of course, if Takaba has his own domain that I just don't know about, well then of course this is a whole different match. But the guaranteed hit in this case is going to hit Takaba. And he's not going to be able to use his technique to funny himself out of the technique, or funny himself to hit Higuruma. No matter what, he's not going to be able to leave the domain, as we know domains are insanely hard to get out of, and also attack Higuruma, or actually attack anything in this instance. Now the thing is, I love Takaba, but come on guys, let's be honest, he is not winning any sort of court case against Higuruma, can we just be honest? And everyone, and I don't care who you are, everyone has committed some form of minor crime, no matter how insignificant, no matter how minor it is, everyone has committed this. And especially Takaba, who he himself said he's pro-violence, a bit headcanony, but perhaps he's gone violent in the past since, again, he himself has said he's pro-violence as a comedian. But it really doesn't matter, it can be any sort of minor crime. I do not care how perfect of an angel angel you are. I mean, Yuji is one of the purest characters we have ever seen, and even he had minor crimes like entering a gambling parlor or place when he was a minor. Something as minor as that will count. And the thing is, once Takaba loses his curse technique, you could argue one way or the other on how his cursed energy control would be affected, because he's not a veteran, so maybe it wouldn't go against his instincts. However, the issue is just naturally losing your curse technique, even if you aren't a veteran, will just naturally feel wrong. And if Takaba doesn't have his curse technique, I just don't see him beating Higuruma, I'm gonna be honest. Higuruma having his curse technique, having his cursed energy, and having his gravel, so I don't think he'd get the death sentence right away. And I don't think Takaba's smart enough to actually think of a retrial, which even if he does, he definitely lose again. So even if you think he was smart enough, it doesn't actually change anything. But once he has that gravel, and of course Higuruma in base is already grade 1 level. Since again, remember, Megumi had actually said that base to base, so no cursed energy, Yuji would actually beat everyone from Kyoto and Tokyo School at the same time in terms of hands. This includes pre-awakened Maki, Todo, Panda, Megumi, all these characters base to base. So people actually don't realize how strong Yuji is in base without cursed energy. He's actually at least semi-grade 1 level. As pre-awakened Maki was definitely at least semi-grade 1, and he would not only beat her but beat everybody else. I'm not even kidding. Physically, Yuji might truly be very, very low tier grade 1 of our cursed energy. It's really nuts, and Higuruma was going to no diff this Yuji, as even Yuji himself said he's just not going to last against Higuruma, and Higuruma was impressed that Yuji was surviving this long, but it clearly wasn't an issue, and he was clearly going to low diff him eventually. So it's truly just a matter of Takaba just getting countered, not just because of a domain expansion which already counters Takaba hard by itself, but it's also because of the fact that this domain expansion will remove your curse technique, and there's not much you can do about it unless you can beat Higuruma in a court case. So unless Takaba has his own curse technique, there is truly nothing he can do about this. And I just want to reiterate, as I said when I started this, Takaba is stronger than Higuruma. I actually think he's a good amount stronger than Higuruma. But again, it's just a matter of matchups, and this is a horrible matchup for him. And I know this is going to make a lot of people upset, because there is a lot of JJK power scalers who think, oh, this character A is stronger than character B. It's not about matchups. It's not about who counters who. It's not about how their abilities mix and match or react to each other. Nope, it's just about character A having a high power level than character B. But I just hope that at the very least you can understand my point. And hey, maybe there is a way Takaba could win this with some crafty technique or something that I haven't thought of, or maybe some way he can get around it. I mean, if you have any win cons for Takaba, let me know in the comments down below, because again, remember, he's not going to be able to use his curse technique to attack Higuruma or even attack the domain, since yes, he still has his curse technique, but the guaranteed hit would still hit him regardless, so his curse technique wouldn't be able to remove that guaranteed hit no matter what, and he wouldn't be able to use any form of violence unless it's verbal violence. Or maybe you think Takaba without his curse technique could beat Higuruma, which is a massive stretch, since his cursed energy flow should be disrupted and he wouldn't be able to control it properly. I mean, it could be possible if you think Takaba's output when he was fighting Iori was solely Takaba and had nothing to do with his curse technique, which again, I don't think is the case, since clearly, as it was said by characters, while Takaba was saying the joke and making the joke, his cursed energy was spiking while he was doing that. So I personally think it's actually his curse technique which is amplifying his cursed energy and output, and I think he's the only character in the entire world that could even do this, because his curse technique is hacked out of its mind. But again, this is just one of those fights where unfortunately, unless he has his own domain, he just loses. So hey, if Takaba comes back with a domain in the future chapters, okay, then I think Takaba wins, okay? So if you're coming here from the future, then you know, that's that. But that is it for the video. I truly hope you guys enjoyed and understood my perspective. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like, as it is much appreciated, and also be sure to subscribe, as I have a ton of JJK what ifs versus battles, power scaling videos, a ton of JJK videos just like this on the channel, even a live stream that's going up as this video is up. And also thank you to all the members of the channel. It is much appreciated, so you can see all your names on the screen. Thank you guys really help out. And if you want to become a channel member as well, you get access to a bunch of cool emotes and badges, so be sure to do so. But yes, that's pretty much the video. As I say at the end of all my videos, which, oh god, it's gonna seem like I'm biased now, if you made it this far, you can let me know in the comments down below by telling me you're a part of the Higuruma fan club. Again, I'm not biased, I've been saying this for 6 months, okay? So yes, let me know if you made it this far. If you did, you're an absolute legend. Thank you. But that's all from me. Take care and have a nice day, guys. Peace.